My name is Sarah, and I am so excited to talk to you today about something that has changed my life: reading. When I was young, I didn't like books. I thought they were boring. But one day, my mom gave me a storybook. It was about a girl, just like me, who found a magical world in her backyard. As I read, something amazing happened. I felt like I was there with her. I could see the trees, feel the breeze, and hear the birds. That day, I realized something special. When you read, you can go anywhere. Books are not just pages with words, they are doors to new worlds. When you open a book, you step into someone else's life. You might be a brave knight, a clever detective, or even a space explorer. Reading takes you on adventures you never imagined. But reading is not just about fun. It's about learning. Every time you read, you learn something new. It could be a new word, a new idea, or even a new way of thinking. Books make you smarter without you even noticing it. When I started reading more, I felt my world grow. I became more curious. I wanted to know more about everything, about the world, about people, and about myself. One of my favorite stories is about a boy who was always scared of everything. He was scared of the dark, scared of talking to people, and even scared of trying new things. But one day, he found a book. It was a book about courage. As he read, he learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going, even when you are. By the end of the story, he was still scared, but now he was brave enough to face his fears. That story taught me that books can change you. They help you see things differently. Reading also helps us connect with others. When we read about different people, we learn to understand them better. We feel what they feel, and this makes us kinder. We become better friends, better family members, and better people. I once met a girl who didn't have many friends. She felt alone most of the time. But then, she started reading stories about friendship. These stories made her realize that she wasn't alone after all. She understood that there were people out there who felt the same way she did. Soon, she found the courage to talk to new people, and guess what? She made friends. Books helped her open her heart. Reading is also a great way to relax. Sometimes, life gets hard. We feel stressed or worried. But when you pick up a book, you can escape for a little while. You can leave your troubles behind and dive into a story that makes you feel happy and calm. It's like a little vacation for your mind. Let me share a small tip. Try to read a little every day. It doesn't matter if it's just one page or even a few lines. The more you read, the more you will love it. And soon, you'll find yourself reaching for a book instead of your phone or TV remote. Another tip is to read what you love. Don't worry about what others are reading. If you love stories about animals, read those. If you love mysteries, dive into them. There's no wrong way to read. It's all about finding what makes you happy. One day, I found a book about a young girl who was trying to find her purpose in life. She didn't know what she was good at, and this made her sad. But as she read stories about other people's lives, she realized that everyone has a different journey. Some people find their purpose early, while others take longer. But that's okay. The important thing is to keep learning and growing. This story taught me that books don't just entertain us, they help us find ourselves. I want to leave you with a thought: reading is a gift. It's a way to see the world through different eyes, to feel emotions you've never felt before, and to learn things that can change your life. So, pick up a book, let it take you on a journey, and who knows, you might just discover something amazing. As I was saying, reading is more than just words on a page. It's a key to understanding the world around us and within us. Let me tell you about another time when reading made a big difference in my life. There was a moment when I felt completely lost. I didn't know what direction to take, and I was filled with doubt and fear. Then, I found a book about a woman who faced many challenges in her life but kept going, no matter how hard things got. As I read her story, I realized something important. Even when life seems difficult, we can keep moving forward, one step at a time. That book became my guide. Whenever I felt scared or uncertain, I remembered her strength and courage. Books have a way of showing us that we are not alone in our struggles. There's always someone who has faced the same challenges before us, and through their stories, we can find the strength to carry on. Another wonderful thing about reading is that it helps you grow your imagination. Have you ever noticed how you start imagining the scenes, the characters, and the places in your mind when you read a book? It's like your brain is painting a picture, making the story come alive inside your head. And the more you read, the more vivid these pictures become. When I was younger, I used to read books about faraway lands and magical creatures. As I read, I could see everything so clearly in my mind: the castles, the dragons, the enchanted forests. It was like my own personal movie playing in my head. And the best part? I was the director. I got to decide what everything looked like. This ability to imagine is so important, not just for kids, but for all of us. When you use your imagination, you start to think more creatively. You find new ways to solve problems. You see the world differently, and you start to dream bigger dreams. Here's another story I want to share. There was a boy I knew who didn't like reading. He thought it was boring and a waste of time. But then, one day, he picked up a book about his favorite sport, football. As he read about the players, their struggles, and their victories, he found himself getting lost in the story. Soon, he was reading more and more, not just about football, but about other things too. He discovered that reading wasn't boring at all, it was exciting. just like the games he loved. That's the thing about reading. Once you find the right book, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. You start looking forward to that quiet time when you can sit down with your book and disappear into another world. And you know what else? Reading helps you become a better person. When you read about different people, different cultures, and different ways of life, you start to understand the world better. You learn to see things from other people's points of view. This makes you more open-minded and compassionate. I remember reading a book about a girl who came from a country very different from mine. Her life was hard, and she had to face many difficulties that I had never experienced. But through her story, I started to understand what it felt like to be in her shoes. I felt her pain, her joy, and her hope. That book taught me to be more empathetic, to see the world through someone else's eyes. Books can also give us hope. Sometimes life feels overwhelming, and we don't know how to keep going. But when you read a story about someone who has overcome great obstacles, it can give you the strength to face your own challenges. You realize that if they could do it, so can you. I once read a story about a man who lost everything: his home, his family, and his job. He was at rock bottom, and it seemed like there was no way out. But instead of giving up, he decided to fight back. He worked hard, stayed positive, and eventually rebuilt his life. That story stayed with me because it showed me that no matter how bad things get, there is always a way forward. And that's what I want to tell you today. Reading is not just about entertainment or learning new facts. It's about finding inspiration, hope, and the strength to keep going, even when life is tough. Now, let me give you another tip. If you ever feel like you don't have time to read, try carrying a book with you wherever you go. You'd be surprised how many moments in the day you can steal for reading while you're waiting in line, during a break at work, or even just before bed. Little by little, those moments add up, and before you know it, you'll have finished an entire book. Another great idea is to read with a friend. You can both read the same book and then talk about it afterward. It's fun to share your thoughts and hear someone else's perspective. You might even notice things in the story that you missed before. And don't forget about audiobooks. If you find it hard to sit down and read, you can listen to a story while you're doing other things like cooking, cleaning, or even exercising. Audiobooks bring the story to life, and they're a great way to enjoy books if you're always on the go. Before I finish, let me tell you one last story. There was a girl who had a big dream. She wanted to change the world, but she didn't know how. She felt small and unsure of herself. Then, one day, she read a book about a woman who had done something incredible. She had worked hard, followed her passion, and made a difference in people's lives. That story inspired the girl. It showed her that no dream is too big, and that if you believe in yourself and keep working, you can achieve anything. That girl was me. Books have given me the courage to dream big and the confidence to go after those dreams. They have shown me that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. So, as I stand here today, I want to leave you with this thought: reading is not just a hobby. It's a journey that can take you to places you've never been, introduce you to people you've never met, and teach you things you never knew. It can make you smarter, kinder, and braver. And most of all, it can help you find yourself. So, pick up a book today. Let it take you on an adventure. Let it open your mind, touch your heart, and change your life. Thank you. My story starts in late July. It was July 21st, I think. It was the first day of our holiday, a hot July day. I stood in the sun and looked at the sea. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I was on the boat at Portsmouth with my mother and father and my sister, Louise. Seabirds played near our big boat and the small boats near us on the sea. I started to look at the people with us on our boat. They all watched the seabirds and talked and laughed. They were all happy on the first day of their holiday too. And suddenly there he was, this tall, quiet boy in a blue and white shirt. He was really good looking. I'll always remember the first time I saw him. He didn't see me then. He was with some friends. One of the boys was his brother. I think they had the same blue eyes, the same mouth and nose, nearly the same hair. His brother and one of the boys with him tried to catch the seabirds and he smiled at them. Then they came and stood near us, and they talked about the small boats on the sea. I watched him over Louise's head all the time. His brother and his friends made a lot of noise, but he was quiet and didn't talk a lot. Then suddenly he looked at me and his eyes stayed quietly on me. And he smiled his lovely smile with his shy blue eyes. The people near me on the boat, the sun, the sea, the birds, the noise of his friends, time it all stopped. At that moment there was only him and me and him and his smile for me. Only the two of us. Slowly, very slowly, the boat started to move away, across the water to Spain. It takes a day and a night on the boat from Portsmouth to Santander in Spain. A day and a night together on the same boat with him. It was a big new boat with cafes, shops, a cinema, and a disco. In the evening, Louise and I went to the disco together. We had a Coke and listened to the music and watched the dancers. But he wasn't there. Then suddenly a tall boy in a black and white shirt came in. It was him. He was with a friend. They stopped and looked slowly at all the people in the disco. It was dark in there, and he stood and looked for a long time. Then he saw me and he smiled a big, friendly smile. I wanted to stand up and sing and dance with him. He came across the room and stopped near our table, and he asked me to dance. Suddenly he wasn't shy with me. We danced together for a long time after that. But then I looked up, and there was a second tall boy in a blue and white shirt at the door of the disco, with the same eyes and the same mouth and nearly the same hair. But the boy near the door had that nice, quiet, shy face, not a big, open, friendly smile. Suddenly I knew this was his brother with me on the dance floor, not him. I was with the wrong brother. He stood for a moment near the door and watched me and his brother on the dance floor with sad eyes. I wanted to run to him, to take his sad face in my hands and say sorry. He looked at me, then he went out quickly. I stopped dancing, walked back to my table and sat down. His brother started to dance with Louise. I didn't sleep that night. I thought about him all the time and listened to the noises of the boat and the sea. In the morning I went to the cafe 8 o'clock and waited there with my sister for a long time. I wanted to say sorry to him. I had 4 cups of coffee, and I don't really like coffee. But he didn't come. Where was he? Where was he? At 11 o'clock we arrived in Santander. I wanted to stop the boat, I wanted to stop the holiday, I wanted to go back to England. I only wanted to see him again, to talk to him, to ask his name. But he wasn't there. Mark's story. I started Spanish at school in September and I like it. We've got a good teacher, Old Webb. Mr. Webb, not Old Webb, my mother always says to me. He isn't old, you know. Old Webb, sorry. Mr. Webb always takes some people from our school to a place in Spain for the first 2 weeks of the holidays, every July. Old Webb is okay, not bad, for a teacher. We were at Portsmouth with Old Webb, sorry. Mr. Webb and Mrs. Webb. She's from Argentina. All the boys think she's good looking, too. There were 6 of us with the Webbs, Harry Potts and his sister Sonia, Nick Atkins, he's a good friend, Sue Bellamy, she's clever. My brother Dave and me were 14 and we're good friends too. Usually, there were hundreds of people on the boat. It was hot in the sun, a lovely day. People watched the sea and the small boats. I liked being in the sun and thinking about the 2 weeks holiday in Spain. Old Webb started one of his stories about Argentina, but I didn't listen. I started to look at the people, and this girl was there, near me. A really good-looking girl with nice brown eyes and black hair. I'm really shy and I'm not very good with girls. I didn't talk to her then, but I watched her with her sister and her mother and father. Then they walked away and she smiled at me for a moment before they went. My brother Dave saw her, and he laughed quietly at my red face. I wanted to see her again, perhaps in the cafe at lunchtime, or perhaps in the cinema in the afternoon. But she wasn't there and I don't remember the film. In the evening we had a drink with Old Webb and lovely Lucrezia, that's our name for Mrs. Webb. After that Dave and Harry went to the disco, they wanted to meet some girls. I don't like dancing, but I went to the disco later. I wanted to see her again. The lovely girl with the dancing brown eyes and the nice smile. It was dark in the disco, and I stood near the door and watched the dancers. Then I saw her on the dance floor, and she was with Dave. With my brother Dave. She smiled at him, too, a lovely smile. I didn't want to watch, I walked out. I went and looked at the sea and thought about things quietly. I thought about her and Dave. I was up early in the morning, before 6 o'clock. I went out again and watched the early morning sun and the sea. There was only one old man and the seabirds there with me. The old man smiled at me, but we didn't talk. I liked being quiet. I went in and had a coffee in the cafe, but I didn't want to eat. All the time I wanted to see her. I wanted her to walk into the cafe and come across to my table and sit down with me and tell me her name and talk to me. But she didn't come. I waited and waited, but she didn't come. At 8 o'clock, I went to find Nick and Dave. Dave was very quiet all day, and he was really nice to me, and I didn't see her again before we arrived in Santander at 11. She wasn't there. The town story. Camillus is a small town 50 kilometers from Santander, near the sea. In the town there are quiet streets of old buildings, and there is a small square. There are small shops and cafes with tables and chairs in the square under the trees. A lot of people from Madrid come to Camillus for their holidays, and a lot of people from England stay in the town too. In the evenings in June and July and August, people like to walk in the streets of Camillus. They stop in the square and stand and talk together. Their children play together. Some people sit at the cafe tables and have a drink and watch the children or read their newspapers or talk. It was disco night in Camillus on the evening after the boat arrived in Santander from Portsmouth. There were a lot of people in the square, Spanish people from Camillus and Madrid, but families from England and France and Germany and Holland too. Some of the English families from the boat were there now, in Camillus for a night or two. Donna was there with her family, at a table under some trees. Her eyes were on the dancers, but she didn't see them. The music was in her ears, but she didn't hear it. She didn't want to look or listen or dance. She didn't want to be there. She only wanted to see the lovely, shy boy from the boat, perhaps to dance with him. First, Mr. and Mrs. Webb wanted to go to a little place near the beach where they always had good fish. They wanted to have a good time on their first evening in Spain, and later there was the disco in the square at Camillus. Mark didn't want to go. He didn't want to eat or dance or talk and laugh. He wanted to sit quietly and think about the good-looking girl on the boat. Where was she now? But Dave and Harry and Nick and Sue all wanted him to go. Later that evening he walked into the square at Camillus with his friends. They found a table at one of the cafes, and they all sat down. Mark looked slowly at the people at the tables near them. Donna looked sadly at the people dancing and standing in the square. Then their eyes met. Time stopped. He was here. She was here. He smiled at her with his nice blue eyes. She smiled back at him with her dark brown eyes. Suddenly he wasn't shy. He stood up and started to walk across to her. She was on her feet. Their hands met. She wanted to dance now, only with him. The others watched and smiled. They all knew. And Dave? Dave watched and smiled happily. You see, only Dave really knew the story. Only Dave knew his plan for his brother. and Donna and Mark started to dance. They were together,